school choice is kind of this new idea that's come out that it's helped so many states. And essentially what it is as parents who have kids, we can decide to take a portion of our tax dollars to the modality or the version of education that we want to educate our kids. So whether that's a charter school, a private school, or even homeschool, we could take some of that money. You get a voucher or a scholarship for that, and you can use it however you'd like. And it, again, goes back to freedom and parental rights.
These policies actually will affect your life. Now, you always have your own, like, I'm going to be rich, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. I'm going to succeed. In other words, you can take personal responsibility. I get all that. But like these policies affect your kids. These policies affect our schools. These policies, they will have effect on your family. They'll have effect on your kids and grandkids. They'll have effect on your community. What are some ways people can start to get themselves either educated, would be step one. And then two is, how do you encourage people to kind of start getting up to speed on just the policies and what's going on and so on, number one. And then two is, what can they do? It's short of running for government. What can they do to have a voice and to make a difference in their communities? All right, welcome back to the Justin Prince Show. Today we are live. We are in person. I have such a cool guest today, and Doug Fiefia is, is a family man. He's an entrepreneur. He works hard in his career, but then in addition to that, he's a public servant, and he's running right now for the House of Representatives here in Utah. And so this will be kind of more. We'll talk politics and we'll talk business and we'll talk the things that matter. By the way, I want to point this out. He's running for House of Representatives for his district here in the state of Utah. So you might say, well, I live in Virginia or wherever it is that you live. Okay. Listen, these conversations are important because the decisions that happen in that district affect the state, and the things that happen in the state affect the country, and things that happen in the country affect the world. So all this stuff matters for all of us, right? Just like getting more involved. In the United States, the Declaration of Independence says, we the people. And a lot of times I think it's easy to be like, man, I wish the government would do this better or do that better or whatever. Okay, cool. You know who the government is, right? The government is we, the people. It's us. So sometimes, like, instead of whining and blaming and complaining, you can have people like Doug that are like, I'll step up and go work for this stuff and fight for this stuff and make this stuff happen. So, Doug, fired up to have you, bro.
Yeah, man, just honored to be here. Thank you for, taking some time to share the message. I think what you said in your opening statement, it is we, the people. And that's kind of why I'm running, is to bring freedom back to the people and allow us to, pursue happiness, life, and liberty. Like that's what it's all about. And I think we've seen issues on a federal level. We've seen it kind of creep into the state of those rights being taken away. And so it takes, individuals like you and I and other good people just to stand up and say, yeah, I'm willing to kind of fight for these things and fight to protect that freedom.
So I'll take you down before we leave today into my gym. Mm-hmm. So I had a guy come hand paint in our gym, and you'll see the whole kind of mural and whatever. But part of it is an American flag, says we the people. And for me, that declaration, it's a declaration of independence, and it's basically a death warrant at this point. You talk about courage and bravery and like standing up for something, but it's not I the person. It's like we the people. So in the United States right now, at least if you were to watch social media, or at least if you were to watch the news, you'd feel like we're as divided as we've ever been. And we may be, right? There may be just these sutures of division. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we're all kind of on the same team, which is, we the people of the United States, right? Like, in other words, we are trying to build a country where we can all live in from all different backgrounds and all different, perspectives. And so I think those words have a lot of meaning. And as you're in this, and as you're kind of getting deep into this kind of political race, what are you seeing when it comes to division? And what are you seeing as far as like polarization? Or are you like, no, as I go talk to people, I feel like we have a lot of common shared values and principles and morals that we all live by.
Yeah, I think if we just watch the news, it feels like everyone is polarized and pulled apart. But the reality is, I think everyone is actually in the 70% in the middle. And I think the media need clicks, they need headlines, and that's why it can be dangerous just to watch the news and that to be your source of truth. As I've gone out and knocked doors, talked to people in Utah, the reality is like we agree on 90% of the things. And we just need to speak out. We need to share what we believe. And I think people have been afraid to share that publicly because they're worried about the criticism. And honestly, if you asked me 3-5 years ago if I'd ever do this, I said, I promised myself no, because of that fear of criticism on me, my family. And so I think it just takes really us, our neighbors, people to just start saying, no, yeah, I believe in this, and having the courage to do that. And I think what you'll be surprised is how many people actually agree with you. And so it just takes a little courage.
How did you overcome that fear of criticism? Because I think even as you're listening to this, if you're looking to up your life, you're looking to get in better shape, or you're looking to maybe take your faith to a different level, take your marriage to a different level, you're looking to take your business to the next level. We all have that fear of like, what if I lose? What if I don't succeed? Or what are people going to say about me and criticize me and attack me and the whole thing? You know, what did you do to overcome that and to like have the courage to go? You know,
it's funny because last night I was watching a video of you, and you were talking about
that's a good put you to bed video.
No, you said, you know, the reason why you started the company or whatever you're talking about was because of your wife and kids.
Yeah.
And that's what it came down to, was looking at my 4 kids every day, looking at my wife every day, and saying, we have to stand up to protect this.
Love that.
This is so precious that it's no longer good enough to stand on the sidelines. And that's what it took for me to say, you know, I was saying and believing I would do anything to protect them, but the reality is I wasn't. And it just took that little flip of the switch to say, okay, what do I need to do to truly protect them? Not physically, because our home is safe, they're protected, they have, you know, the things that they need, but it's also in school, in the community, in, you know, in media and social media. What are things that I can do more? And that's what it came down to, was there are laws being created and policies being made that affect our families.
That's right.
And it's happening in schools, it's happening really all around us. And in order to really protect our families, sometimes it means you have to stand up and run for office. And that doesn't mean everyone has to run for office, but it means you need to speak out in schools, in the community, in different areas that you're involved. Speak out to protect the things that are most precious to you. And so it just, again, came down to realizing my family's what's important to me, and I've got to stand up to protect them.
I think a lot of us, we think to ourselves, politics oftentimes going like on like a spectrum, right? You start with like, I don't even know what's going on. I can't control any of this stuff. What's going on? Have you watched the news? I don't even know what's going on. Who's running for what?
Yeah.
And then you start getting into almost like, I can't control it. I don't even know what those guys are doing. You know, those girls are doing. Then you get to a point where you're like, these guys are idiots. Like, what the heck do they just, what's this decision? You know? And then maybe you start getting more like, there's almost a helpless feeling of like, what the heck, where are we going? You know, this stuff does matter, because to your point, these policies actually will affect your life. Now, you always have your own, like, I'm going to be rich, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. I'm going to succeed. You know, in other words, you can take personal responsibility. I get all that. But like these policies affect your kids. These policies affect our schools. These policies affect, they will have effect on your family. They'll have effect on your kids and grandkids. They'll have effect on your community, you know? So I think it does matter to get in the game. So in your case, and I want to dive into like your story, but in your case, if you're listening to this, what are some ways people can start to get themselves either educated, would be step one. And then 2 is how do you get involved? If let's just say you're listening to this, you're like, okay, I love my kids too. You know, I want to stand up and protect them. How do you encourage people to kind of start getting up to speed on just the policies and what's going on and so on, number 1. And then 2 is, what can they do? You know, short of running for government, what can they do to have a voice and to make a difference in their communities?
Yeah. So step number 1 is figuring out who your representative or senator is. And that's on the state level. Every state has a state assembly or a state legislature, and knowing who those represent your neighborhood matters the most, right? And knowing who your city council members are, and also knowing who your state school board members are. Those 3 kind of groups influence you and more of your day-to-day than who is president, right? And so knowing who they are is step 1. And you can typically do that with a quick Google search. Yeah. Then it's finding out, okay, what are things that they're discussing? What are they voting on? And that could be done by a city council agenda. Right now in Utah, we're amidst the legislative session, which is 45 days where they pass laws. And so just looking at the agenda, right, you can go at le.utah.gov and look at all the bills that are being discussed that day. And so that's kind of the next thing is like, okay, well, this has to deal with whatever it is, education.
Mm-hmm.
If you care about education, read the bill or read what's going on. And they have highlights, right? It's a few sentences. I don't really care about that. I care about this. Then the next level is if you read that and it's something you're passionate about, reach out to your representative. And that could be a short email. That could be showing up to the legislature and saying, hey, I'd like to speak with you. But I've talked to, at this point, 10s, 20, 30, like those little conversations, those emails or texts go up to the top of the priority list of when they're voting, that's what they think of. And so those are the things that affect your neighborhood. They affect the schools that our kids go to. They affect everything, the taxes that we pay. And so, yes, it takes a little work. And I think that's where people kind of step back and like, it's too much work. Busy. I don't really care. I have a lot of stuff going on. But honestly, within 30 minutes, you can make a huge difference to your community, to your neighborhood.
That's so powerful. Yeah, your voice matters. And getting up to speed matters. So when I was about 28, 29, I went and spoke throughout the former Soviet Union. I did like a tour through the former Soviet Union. So Moscow, Omsk, Russia, and Almaty, Kazakhstan. Wow. And I love history. I love history, period. I just like to learn. I'm super curious. It's one of the reasons I love conversations like this. I don't know. I'm just interested. But nothing's better than learning history in the spots, right? So when you're in the Red Square and you got the Kremlin and you're just like, what is happening here? It's really cool to learn the history there. My interpreter name was Olga, and she was from Kiev in the Ukraine. And so it was really interesting to hear all of her perspective. She had 2 husbands. She'd been married twice. Both were killed. One of them, they found him shot dead in it was like a slow moving river. So as you walked over the bridge, he was laying there with a bullet in the back of his head, and that was her one husband. And then another one was killed as well. So the Bolsheviks, people that know history, the Bolshevik Revolution, so Russia was run by a czar, 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution. Bolsheviks would be like the Republicans or the Democrats. In other words, it was a revolution of a political party. And it was led by Vladimir Lenin. They ultimately overthrew the government, killed the czar, the king, and his family. And then they took over, right, in 1921. And then from 21, they created the United Soviet Socialist Republic, or I might have that wrong, USSR. Point is if you think of the flag, it's a red flag, and it has a hammer and a sickle. So a sickle would be like for wheat, and then a hammer would. So it's for the workers, that was the hammer, and the sickle was for the peasants. So basically, like, we're here to take, because there's been kings, and then we're all peasants and workers. This is for the peasants and workers. And they implemented communism. So communism was the commune, right? We're all going to share. No, there won't be really any rich. There won't be any poor. We'll all share. So you're kind of like, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do this. The problem is if you had if you owned land, you couldn't own the land anymore because we had to share the land. You're like, well, it's kind of my land. I worked hard for this. So there's no ownership. So your home, your land, and the only way to do that, because not everyone's just willing to give it over, because they're like, well, I worked way harder than Ed down the street. Ed doesn't even do anything. It doesn't even work. And so I had to take it from you. So they took God out of the country because they wanted, in essence, the power to be to the country versus the people. Took God out of the country, took all the books out of the country. They literally burned the books. Olga goes, they would just burn these big piles of books. Then there was no ownership. So you couldn't own your business. The government owned your business. We all worked for the government, for the state, the socialist state. So they do this for 70 years. So think of like our parents, right? Like 70 years is about a generation. It's about a human life. Now, maybe 83 is the average, but it's about someone's life, right? So from 1921 to 1991, for a generation, that's what it was. And so when we talk in our country about, I tell people like, breathe in. So as you're listening to this, just do this with me for a second. Just breathe in. You go, you smell that. Do you know what that smells like? That smells like economic opportunity and political freedom. And we are used to that air. It's rare air because there's other spots in the world that don't breathe that kind of air. I've stood on the border of the demilitarized zone in North and South Korea. On this side, you can smell it. Opportunity, political freedom. On this side, no opportunity, no political freedom, right? Like where you stand matters, and there's different spots. You and I just happen to be like, I don't know, we just happen to plop in a spot, and my guess is many of you listening, we just happen to come down to a place where there's political freedom, economic opportunity. There's other people that don't have that. And they fight for it. Like they literally, like the glint in their eye, the dreams that they have now to be able to like pursue things. So I share that to say this: making something of your life, fighting for your dreams, fighting for your family, fighting for your future, fighting for your freedom is not just your right because of the political freedom, economic opportunity. It's your responsibility to know this kind of stuff and to like get yourself up to speed, because you have this political freedom, economic opportunity. But just because you had it and your mom had it and your daddy had it and your grandma had it and your grandpa had it and your great grandpa doesn't mean it'll be forever. You know, you got to go fight for this stuff. So I admire that you're out there working to make a difference and to fight for your family, because you're fighting for all of our families, right? In a way of saying, I've got some values and principles. Yeah. I want to dive into your background a little bit. So you're from kind of the South Jordan area, right? Mm-hmm. Growing up. Kind of, did you grow up in that Hunter High School area?
I did. Yeah, we lived in kind of the Kearns, West Valley area for a while growing up, and then later in life, my dad had a construction company, grew it, and we're fortunate enough to go and build a home there in South Jordan, and so we kind of moved to kind of the more suburban area. But I think going back to kind of your last point is, I have to just look to my parents to remember what it was like, living in the islands and living under a king.
By the way, tell everyone where your folks are from.
Yeah, so they're from the islands of Tonga in the South Pacific. And the reason why they came to America in the late 70s was this fresh air. So powerful. Is the American dream.
It gives me goosebumps, bro.
Yeah.
So powerful.
I like to remember it, and just because it wasn't long ago that we were in a home in Kearns, Utah with 5 other families and sleeping on hardwood floor like little sardines to stay warm at night, and sleeping outside with my grandpa on his mattress to stay cool in the summer nights. And so those memories aren't far from me. And the freedom that I fight for, again, and the reason why I'm running is not some recognition. It's not some title or money. It's because I realize how sacred these rights and these privileges that we have are. It's more than just a dream. It's a miracle that we are here in America and have these freedoms, but we've got to have good people continue to step up and to protect these rights.
Yeah. So listen, I feel like America is under attack more than any time I ever remember in my lifetime. Like the values and principles of America, there's narratives or stories that would basically say America's evil. It's founded on evil principles. And I want to say this: do I think that the country's perfect? Of course not. I don't think a country's run by a bunch of men and women, and humans are like not perfect, right? So there's a lot of imperfections, and there's a lot of challenges and things that you have to continually work for when you get humans together. But like, if you had a great restaurant, it's like this: how do you know you have a great restaurant? How do you know you have a great restaurant? Well, one of the ways is there's like a line, 3 blocks down the road of people trying to get a seat in the restaurant. That's one way. Now, maybe the hostess isn't always on her game. Maybe the waiter screwed up. Maybe the meal was a little colder than they wanted it. But people are lined up down the street to get in. Like, people will fight. I've been all over the world. I've seen people make makeshift rafts that they got in the middle of the ocean in a makeshift fake raft to get to America. I've met people that have dug under barbed wire fences in the middle of the night to get to breathe that air. That's really special air. And I think we take it for granted a lot, living here. And I love that you grew up in an environment where that's still really real to you. Like how special this really is. By the way, dive into that for a sec. So growing up, 5 families in one home, how did your parents pull through that section and not have that be, and how did you pull through that? Because sometimes people say, I am where I am now because of that, and they would blame that environment. For you, you've created a great life for yourself. How did your parents, and then where did you learn this idea of like, that's not going to be me growing up?
I think it was just seeing my parents work so hard. And with every, the great thing in America and in Utah is the more hard work and effort you put in, you're rewarded, right? And so, yes, my dad had 3 jobs, but they paid him. And with every little increase in hard work and, education, he was learning new trades and learning new things, we progressed in life. And it's just crazy to think that in one generation, from my dad and my parents coming to America to me, granted that everything works out, in November, I could be writing laws. Like, in what country do you go from
It really is. It's so cool.
Immigrant who comes new to someone who is, serving in the government? And it's just a huge blessing. And I think, people can be the victim. But one of our mutual friends always says, you're probably the victim, but how does it serve you? Right. And it's like, you're probably right. Yes. Living in a home with 5 other families, that sucks. And you can cry about it and you can pout about it all day, but how does that serve you? And I think my parents came to America. They gave up everything to be here. And now they said, okay, this is the opportunity. Let's make the most of it. And it's just amazing to see kind of my parents and where they've progressed. And now it's not only my opportunity, it's my responsibility to move that forward because they work so hard.
So I love that. You learned a lot of disciplines, obviously from your folks, from their work ethic, but some of those you applied into sports. And you played sports at, about as high a level as you can, below being paid for it, below being a professional. Both in high school, winning state championships, and then also going and playing Division I football. So walk us through a little bit of your sports career, because when we were hitting each other up on Instagram, I was like, "Yo, bro, I got some Fiefia stories, dude, because I play against your bro, against David, and he was chopping us up out there."
Yeah, I think Polynesians tend to move this route because we're built differently, like biologically. Like,
that's right.
That's
a perfect way to say
some
it.
big dudes. I'm on the smaller end, but I was a little bit faster than other of the big Tongans, and so we tend to move towards rugby, football, and I grew up that. And my brother David, he was Mr. Football in 1999 or something, and I just followed.
Don't say 1999 like it was that long ago, bro. That's when I was graduating high school.
Ancient history, no.
So I got to tell you a funny story. David will appreciate this. So we played. My high school team played Hunter twice that year. No. My junior year we played him twice. My junior year we played him twice. Senior year I played him once. On the second time in my junior year, I'm starting at free safety. And David was a running back, right? He was number 39. He was just a shifty little dude, but he was also super built. Like, he had just big old thighs and just super strong. So anyway, they run a sweep to the left, and so it's to my right. And he's just juking everybody, just like Barry Sanders. He's just making everybody miss. Like, I'm talking like everybody, like 9 people have missed. And I'm seeing him come up, and I'm like, bro, it was a freaking awesome run. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, that's a heck of a run, but it's over now, right? Anyway, he stops and reverses all the way, because he was on the sideline, all the way back to the right side of the field, the entire field. So he goes like a big belly back like this, comes all the way back, and at this point, he shakes a couple of people. It's just he and I. And he's coming up the sidelines, and I literally was like, that was even a better run, but now it's for sure over, And he comes up on the sidelines, and I was a really sure tackler, a super confident kid. I was strong, whatever. I was like, that's over. Good run. He fakes to the sideline, fakes a cutback, and then goes to the sideline. In the inside cutback, I thought he was cut back for sure. I just dive, just boom, like this. I look at him like, expecting the hit. I just got a bunch of grass. I look back. I'm laying on my stomach. I look back, and he's run for a 60-yard touchdown. And I was like, there's levels to the game. I was just so embarrassed. So he'll appreciate that story. But your family had both the shiftiness, like the quickness, but then also the freaking power to go make it happen,
Yeah, man. I'm sure he'll love that story.
Yeah, he'll love that story. That's dude,
his glory
that's a
days.
short clip right there,
But yeah, I mean, I played football, followed in his footsteps. I played here down south, here in St. George at Dixie. It's now Utah Tech, and then served an LDS mission, came back and went to Utah State. And, we had this conversation before we jumped on camera, but, things change. There's different levels.
Yeah.
I was playing again, behind what happened to be 3 NFL running backs. And so I was blocking and things shifted me to a different route, right? Like I guess I could see the opportunity wasn't there and was like, look, football is not my future. And I wish more athletes had that conversation, that real conversation with themselves. And I walked away, hung up the cleats, hung up the helmet, and was like, okay, I've got to figure a way to pay for school. And I was like, I did student government in high school. I think I could do it here. It was a whole another ball game. But I knew I could step into a world I didn't know because I knew I was willing to work harder than anyone else. And so I ran for student body president, not knowing anything, 30,000 students at Utah State University, and just was like, I'll knock every door. And we did. We knocked every single door multiple times, and we won in a landslide. I was this nobody who just showed up, and they're like, how did he win? I was like, it's because I talked to everyone multiple times. And again, it goes back to, it doesn't take much to make a difference. Like that, I made the decision, I went and did it, and it took a little bit of work, but you and your community can make a difference by just speaking out, helping candidates that are willing to fight, or you stepping up and saying, enough is enough. I want this to change in my school, or I don't want to pay these taxes. It's not fair. And you can make a difference wherever you're at.
So you're saying, like, I wish more athletes would realize, this is not going to be, I think all of us in our lives, like, there's decisions that you need to make today that will change your health forever. Like, that's not serving you right now. Or there's decisions you need to make today that this is not, what are we doing? I tell people, do you see yourself doing this in 5 years? And they say, no. I said, you shouldn't be doing it for 5 more minutes. Like, we've got to, let's go live life versus just like this grind through it, right? And then that second part of your work ethic, I feel like this is one of those skills, one of those personal identities of I'm going to outwork everybody. That I feel like we're this next generation, we got to instill it in these kids. They don't know how to just work, not just the hours, but to stay mentally engaged and stay focused and have a good attitude and actually put in the grind. That is such a great principle. So that's when you first kind of started getting into the kind of political world, was as the president of Utah State.
Yeah. Started working with, the state legislature. You start asking for funds, for money to fund a building or fund a program. We worked with the governor's office my second year serving as student body president to keep tuition from raising and increasing that year, which was huge. That was a huge win. I mean, as a student in Utah, you're one of 30,000 to then work with the governor of Utah to say, hey, we don't want tuition to increase this year, and him to agree, and then basically give out an executive order to all kind of the university presidents to say, hey, we're not increasing tuition this year. Like, that kind of gave me the glimpse of, it just takes a voice. It just takes a couple voices to say, this is what we care about. We're willing to fight for this. And, someone in power, if they believe you, or if they'll sit down and listen to you, they can make the change that makes the difference. And that's millions and millions of dollars that were saved that year just by that one decision. There's 10 student body presidents who came together and said, hey, this is a hard year for our students. We can't make this increase. Work with the governor's office. And then he was like, yeah, we're not going to do it. Called our presidents. My president, the university president, called me and was like, hey, the governor has called me and said that we're not increasing tuition. What are your thoughts? He didn't know we'd been working on this with the governor's office. And I said, yeah, we've got to figure out another way to pay the bills. We can be more prudent. We can be more responsible with, student fees and student tuition. And let's figure it out together. I'd like to sit down with you to say, these are the important programs. These are ones that maybe we can sacrifice because we're not increasing fees and tuition this year. And so I just got a little bit of taste of, you can make a difference, you can speak out. And I think the more you see that and realize it, it's like, hey, we can all make a difference.
One of the reasons I think I'm drawn to you as a human, and in this case to you as in the political world, is I feel like you're really a values and principle based person. So in other words, like you have this foundation of strong values. You've already given one. Hard work would be one, or love for family would be one, like with your folks, or taking like personal responsibility. Do you know what I'm saying? Those are like values and principles you kind of live by, like self-reliance. And I'm not gonna whine and blame and complain. I'm gonna make decisions, make commitments, and move forward with my life.
Yeah.
What would be some of these values and principles that, as you say, look, this is kind of how I see the world. This is like some of the foundational stuff for me that moves me. What are some of the values and principles you feel like you live by, and how do those shape the way you look at politics?
I think hard work is definitely one. And that has shaped the way I work, and I'm running my campaign and run my business.
I mean, dude, I've seen you on a ton of podcasts, just for example. You know, this takes effort to go, you know, we're at your vacation with the kids. Like, we got to get you back to go hang out with the kids, but it takes effort to get out and keep sharing your message with people, even when you're, in this case, on vacation, you know?
Yeah. I would say the other big one is integrity, which I think we all would love to see a little bit more of in politics. There have been times already that I have had to say no to certain things or people because it's not in line with me as a person, to my core. And so there's just things I can't live with and can't go to bed at night. Again, the reason why I'm doing this is my kids, my wife, and in turn, like you said earlier, if I'm fighting to protect my family, I'm also fighting to protect your family.
No
and so why would I take money or do something that would be against my core if that's why I'm doing it? And I think sometimes people can lose sight of why they're doing things, and they start to give in and sacrifice their morals for it. And I think my parents taught me at a young age, like, there's things that we just don't ever negotiate and compromise, and that's our core values. And that goes back to faith and God and integrity, hard work. Those are core values that will never leave me and are a part of everything I do.
You were mentioning there's like kind of three main initiatives or three main passions that you're wanting to really focus on in the House of Representatives. Walk us through what those three are. I want to kind of dive into those a little bit. What are the challenges you're seeing, and what are some of the potential things that you'd like to do? But why are those three the ones that you've said this is really the difference I want to go make?
Yeah. So number one, the family, protecting the family. And when I say the family, it means all facets of the family. And I think sometimes when people hear me speak, they're like, there's just this one thing, and they take it one route. But the reality is the family's being attacked on all fronts. And we can look at mental health, right? Suicide is at an all-time high here in Utah, especially with our youth. We could look at screen time and that being a part of it. A third of kids' days is on a screen. It's average about 8 hours a day. So if they're not at school and they're not sleeping, they're on a screen. So let's talk about that. The amount of inappropriate images and things that are exposed through that screen time. There's been studies done by Instagram and Facebook, which are interesting, that show that 30% of girls are exposed to images that are unwanted and are inappropriate. Also, it shows that these girls it affects their mental health negatively. And this is, run by the actual companies who are putting this out. And so we've got to start talking about some of those issues and how it's affecting our families and our homes. So there's a lot of different things. 1 in 4 homes don't have a father in the home, and how that affects our families and our kids. There's about, last I checked, there was about 1,200 kids in the system in Utah without parents and are in foster care. Let's start talking about how do we solve that. And so it's not just one thing, but when I look at the problems that are in America and also in the state of Utah, a lot of them could be solved by strengthening the family and the home. And I think if we spent a little bit more time there and getting rid of the noise of all other issues that make the headline, the family is not a sexy topic to talk about. Nobody really wants to talk about it. And quite frankly, it's hard to run on because I can't just say this on your podcast. I've actually got to be a good husband and dad. It means I've actually got to show up in the home and do the things that I'm fighting for, which every day I'm reminded, don't be a hypocrite. Like, don't go on a podcast and say you're fighting for the family if you can't be home to pray with your kids at night, if you can't wake up to go and get them ready and take them to practice or take them to school. And so it's probably one of the hardest things you can run on without giving up your integrity, because you've got to stand up for what you believe in.
Let me say this on family too. I feel like all change starts within a human, right? Like, I want to be the one. I want to make a difference. And then if you really want to affect change, like for example, if you want to affect change in the world, you can affect change in the country, if you change in the state, in the district, and then like in the homes, right? Like if you can affect change in the homes, which is by changing the heart of the person, right? The person says, you know what, I want to be a better person, cool. And then I want to create a better family unit. That is the reverberation effect on the rest of everything else. If we can strengthen homes and strengthen families, the ripple effect that has in churches, in schools, in sports, in business, it just starts rippling out because the families are strong.
Yeah, because when you strengthen the family in the home, what happens is they start looking outward. Okay, how do we increase this? How do we make our circle bigger? And that happens in our businesses, that happens in our church communities, that happens at school when your kid is serving and helping, and it just continues to grow from there.
Do you feel like with your Tongan background specifically, Tongan heritage, do you feel like family is just that much more of a thing for you? Because I feel like in the Tongan world, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. I may be wrong. I feel like in the Tongan world, family's basically everything. Do you know what I'm saying? Family's a really big deal. Do you feel like that is part of that, has effect on your perspective on it?
Yeah. In the islands, family is kind of everyone is family. And I've said this before, but there's no real word for cousin, aunt, or uncle in the Tongan language. If you're my aunt or uncle in the Western terms, you're my dad or mom. If you're my cousin, you're my brother or sister. And I will treat you, I will feed you, I will clothe you, and I will, if I'm your uncle or you're acting as your dad, I will discipline you the way that I would my own children. And so there's this community feel that we each take responsibility for each other. We are literally raised by the village, but in a sense, that's our family. And I think we're talking about individual homes and individual families, but I think the Tongan community sees us all as a big family. And so we take responsibility in saying, we're going to make our family, work and right. And it extends to the entire country, which is beautiful.
So I was on my buddy Tyler Hall's podcast, and it's called the Roller Coaster Podcast. And I can't remember how the conversation came up, but I had just left the gym a couple days earlier, and there's this young kid. His dad and I are buddies. I see him at the gym all the time, and he's pushing the sled, like back and forth. He's like 14. I can tell he's a kid, And I said, "Is that your son?" He goes, "Yeah." And I go, "What school does he go to?" Because my daughter's 14, so it's a similar community, Mm-hmm. And he goes, "He's not going to school today." And I could tell he's kind of bugged. And I go, "Okay, cool. All right, what's up?" And then I go, "But what school does he go to?" He goes to this school, and he goes, "But he's expelled." And I could tell his dad was bugged. I'm like, cool. And he goes, "Keep pushing the sled until I tell you to stop," kind of thing. I was like, all right. Anyway, did my workout. I'm done. I see him. He's like sitting on a bench, like shoulders just, he's exhausted, shoulders down. He's 14, so he's kind of frumpy kid, right? Like shoulders down, we're just kind of walk around. I'm walking out. I literally like push the door to walk in. I thought, no, I'm gonna go say something to him. So I walk over to him. I go, "Hey, what's up, man? What's up?" I'm like, "What's your name?" Tells me. So my name's Justin. I go, "Do you mind if I give you a piece of advice, dude?" I go, "Your dad told me you're in trouble." I said, "I don't care what you did, dude." I said, "Can I give you a piece of advice?" He goes, "Sure." I go, "Listen." I said, "You're not what you did, but you are what you repeatedly do." I said, "So you're not your mistakes, but you are what your habits and patterns, like what you repeatedly do." I said, "Listen, when I was 14, I probably did a bunch of stupid stuff too." I said, "I don't even know what you did." I said, "It's all good. I'm not judging you one way or the other." I said, "I'm just telling you, I probably did a bunch of stupid things too. I just want you to know, keep your chin up. That's not who you are. You'll get through this, Anyway, tell that on his podcast, and he posts a clip, like a little short clip. And dude, like, I think we're at like 10 or 12 million views at this point. So most people were like, "Hey, good piece of advice. Thank you," whatever. And then I had all these just people piling on. This is like, "How dare you talk to his son? And how dare you say this? Who do you think you are?" and stuff. And I just thought to myself, I was like, if someone has good intentions or good intentions, good person, and they are giving encouraging advice to one of my kids, yo, you can go talk to my kids and encourage my kids anytime, because I feel like there's so much negativity. There's so much of the suicide and the mental health and the challenges, and these kids are going through a lot of stuff. And sometimes it's nice to have the village say it, because there's a power of someone else says it. It's the auntie or the uncle, or in this case, the community that says, yo, keep your chin up. You got this. That actually means more sometimes than the parents' voice, just because sometimes we get drowned out because they hear us all the time, right? So isn't that so interesting? That's the one that takes off, because people are like, societally, it's a little bit of like a microcosm, right, of humans. They're like, no one can talk to my kid, all this kind of stuff. And I just thought, wow, what an interesting case study of human beings that somehow rubs somebody the wrong way,
I think we've got to move away from that protection. We're protecting our kids, but we're bubble wrapping them.
That's right.
And it's hurting them. I mean, the mental health, their confidence levels is so low because they're not experiencing failure. They're not experiencing criticism in the home or outside of the home. And so, look, I love what you did. And I think we need a little bit more of that, of all of us taking responsibilities. And it's just not just kids and raising them, but it's everything. You go outside and it's a public road and you see some garbage, pick it up. This is your neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, don't go and call the city to come and pick up garbage that's down the street, because that's tax dollars that someone has to come out and drive out and do it. If you can do it in 10 minutes, take responsibility and do it, right? And it takes a village, it takes a community to start making those changes. But we've got, I think, in the world of connectivity and engagement and social media, we've become kind of recluses where it's like, I don't want to go out and do all these things. And I think we need to get back to 20, 30, 40 years ago when I could go down the street and ask someone for sugar or an egg, or just become community and neighbors that help each other out.
Absolutely agree. 100%. Okay. So families is number one big pillar, which, by the way, 100% agree. Maybe it's tough to run on, but man, if you really want to affect change, affect the family, right?
Absolutely.
So what's number two for you?
Number two is education. School choice is kind of this new idea that's come out that it's helped so many states. An introductory bill was passed last session, HB 215. A friend of mine, Representative Candice Perucci, passed it. And essentially what it is as parents who have kids, we can decide to take a portion of our tax dollars to the modality or the version of education that we want to educate our kids. So whether that's a charter school, a private school, or even homeschool, we could take some of that money. You get a voucher or a scholarship for that, and you can use it however you'd like. And it, again, goes back to freedom and parental rights. One, the parent should have every right, and it is their right to be involved in their child's education and their upbringing. And so if you're paying these taxes, you should decide where it goes. And if for some reason you believe that either public school is not living up to par, whether it's values or the quality, you can take that elsewhere. Charter school, private school, or homeschool. And this type of program in my community in West Valley, I just couldn't imagine the level of education I could have gotten, my friends, my cousins could have gotten, with an additional $8,000 to go towards a private school that was never in the realm of possibility before.
Well, do you want to know what's also interesting? I look at what's happening. The schools that we grew up in, the schools of most people listening right now, the schools we grew up in, which I'm not saying they were perfect, it's not the same today. Like, the education that these kids are getting is not the same. The experience the kids are having. And think about this. Those kids are there for 8 hours a day for 12 years of their life, or whatever that is, 18 years of their life. That will shape these kids. So this matters. This education matters. And then the environment that they're experiencing matters. And there is people making decisions on curriculum that I think if a lot of parents knew, they're like, wait, they're learning what? Are you kidding me? Like, they would be like, no, I don't agree with that. That's to your point. Like, you got to start, like, mom, dad, like, I know you're busy, but you got to know this stuff, because you're sending your kids there for the next 18 years and they're going to learn a lot of stuff,
I mean, I sat down with my 10-year-old to do math, and the math that you and I grew up with, there's now something called Common Core, and something simple as what's 30 times 45. And I'm sitting down writing it number over number. Here's how you do it. And she's like, Dad, that's not how you do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, show me how to do it. Draws a square, and 10 minutes later, she did a problem that I did in just 10 seconds. And I'm like, why are we teaching kids this, right? Like, we're wasting so much time with changing just the core way that you would do math. And so that's just a small example.
Yeah, no, it's a great example.
Another example of, aside from curriculum, is, I don't know if you've heard of furries.
Yeah.
I mean, we have in classrooms, like, litter boxes being put aside in classrooms so that...
By the way, this is real.
This is real.
This is happening. Like, I live in a relatively small community, right? St. George isn't a huge place. And I would say it's a relatively conservative place, right? And like my aunt is a substitute teacher up in Seattle. If you heard her stories, parents they wouldn't even believe that they were true. So the furry stuff is happening in my kids' classes in St. George, Utah.
Yeah. Same in Harriman, Utah. My kids came home asking me, like, what is this thing? Like, a teacher is treating a child like a cat, and they have to provide litter boxes and, like, oh yeah, you can go. And they meow and, act like a dog. And that's how they communicate with kids. And so my question is what are we teaching our kids? And so you may think that that's crazy and that's not happening in your community, but we've just proved that even in Utah, in conservative areas, that this is happening in our schools. And so instead of having my kids sit there and watch a teacher spend 20 minutes trying to get a kid to do something and meowing and making animal sounds, like, maybe we should take our dollars somewhere else. My kids go to a public school, so that's not saying that, I'm taking my kids, I'm pulling my kids, but parents should have the right, if they want, to change that. And I think, again, it improves the public school, it improves all of our education, and it improves parents being involved in their child's education.
Okay, so I want to hit you with two thoughts. As I think about the furry thing, I have two thoughts. Number one, if this young child is going through some stuff, I have nothing but empathy. Do you know what I'm saying? Nothing but empathy. So there's that half. My second half is this, though. Part of what happens in a village, or part of what happens in a tribe, or part of what happens in a family, or part of what happens in a community. You're the youngest of five kids, and were they all brothers?
2 brothers, 2 sisters.
Okay, perfect. What happens in a family is if you start acting a fool, guess what your brother does? He's like, yo, bro, don't freaking do that anymore. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's like course corrections, just like little taps. Like, when you start going off here, your brother's like, dude, what are you doing? That's not how we roll in our family. And they kind of smacks you back. You go off here, you start, doing something goofy. Your sister's like, what are you doing? There's these little course corrections that kind of keep you on it's like a member of the family, a member of the village, a member of the tribe. It's part of how we are as humans, is we want to be part of the crew, right? So what's happened is these hard extremes on both sides start to pull. Bill Maher did an amazing kind of monologue once. He was talking about the gay and trans movement, and he basically did it statistically. And he's like, and again, I'd have to go look, I'd have to pull it up. He's like, by 2050, everyone in the world will be gay and trans because of the exponential. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's almost like, and I'm not saying people aren't gay. I'm not saying they're not trans, but the social pull towards it, where everyone's like, I think I am. I don't know. Are you guys hanging out? Like, are you following?
Yeah.
They're like, they kind of get, it becomes socially kind of just like, well, my friends are, I guess I am. You're not having enough people be like, a teacher can't be like, yo, dude, knock it off. Let's go. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when you lose some of that, and again, I'm not saying we need to go bring paddles back at school. I'm not going that far. But like, if I'd have come home growing up and acted like a cat, do you know what my dad would have done to me? I mean, it just wouldn't have. I mean, just come on.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, in 1,000 years, wouldn't have done that, because my dad had been like, there's no chance this is happening here. That stuff is good, to have that level of discipline, where people are disciplined, meaning literally like, I am disciplined in my decisions, but also disciplined like, I'll correct your wrongdoings, wrong thinking, to help you kind of just stay within the reality of what's going on.
Yeah. And I think just an additional point is we're actually tying the teacher's hands.
That's what,
because they can't course correct, right? So it's
100%.
like, as a teacher, they're like, I have to respond with a meow, or how do I even handle this?
I feel worse. I probably feel the worst for the teachers, because they are now set up to, if you try and course correct in any way, then it's like, now you're like discriminating against someone or whatever. I feel almost the worst for the teachers.
Yeah.
The kids are just like, what the frick is going on here? But the teacher can't I mean, I just think to myself, if I was a teacher, I'd be like, no, dude, no. Like, let me talk to you. Let me see if I can work this through. But what are you doing? You know? Again, maybe I'm a little old school that way. Maybe that's insensitive. I understand that everyone's got challenges they're facing, but the course corrections that happen in a village are part of what keeps the society moving forward.
Yeah. Kids are seeing it too. Just a quick story. One of my good friends, his son, he's 12 years old in a classroom, and this kid is just having a fit. And everyone's watching it, and the teachers' hands are tied, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I can't yell at them. I'm trying to calm them down and talk calmly, but like it's just disrupting the entire class. And my friend's son walks over to the teacher and says, if I were you, I wouldn't deal with that. They're even seeing like, you're the person in authority. You're a teacher. Like, you've got to do something. Like, do you want me to help? And so it just kind of is interesting that we're continue to build this environment in society where kids are, I don't want to say failing, but it's sending mixed messages, right? It's like, you can do whatever you want in a class. There's no authority. And yes, we want to accept you as you are and love you. And again, if you're dealing with mental health issues, those are very real, and let's figure what that is. But there's got to be hey, you can't do that. Yeah. There's some rules in place. There's some, a structure to this, and you can't just do whatever you want. Because in real life, in a job, when you're driving out, there's laws and there's rules.
There's standards, for sure.
You can't leave school and just at work have a tantrum and just say, well, boss, you can't fire me. The reality is you'll get fired.
So I have two thoughts for you. And this is more for the people listening, right? You get what you tolerate if you tolerate what you get. So like right now, if you don't want this to kind of, if you want change in education, if you want change in the homes, if you want change in the, positive direction for society, listen, you're going to get what you tolerate if you continue to tolerate what you're getting. Like the drift will happen, right? And that's, to your point, it's one of the reasons I admire you is you're like, I'm going to do my very best to make a difference. And to like, I don't tolerate this, and I'm going to do my best to make a difference. The second thing is, I teach 3 S's like when you're building a culture. By the way, what is a culture? In Tonga, there was a culture built, in this case, that we all were family. That's a culture. Culture is, how do we treat each other and how do we behave with each other? That's culture. Like a company culture, like we love our culture here. What is it? It's like, this is how we all treat each other. That's what the culture is. Or a team culture, like if you're building a team, or the culture that you would build in a family. Like if the kids steal, mom goes, did you steal that? Where'd you get that piece of candy? And you said, she said, did you buy that? Yeah, no, I don't think you bought it. Let's go back. And she makes you drive back to the store, talk to the manager, tell him you're sorry, either pay him the money or give it back or go work for him for free for a few hours. Mom, why is mom doing that? Because in our family, she's setting a standard. In our family, there's a way we treat each other. There's a way we treat other people. There's a way we behave. She's creating a culture, right? So there's 3 S's I teach. One is set your standard. So as a person, set your standard. We have these in our health. We have them in our, we have standards. It's like, have you ever had this? Like if your weight starts to creep, you're like, this is like this is below my standard. So you kind of get it down. We have standards. Set your standard in your family. Set your standard with the way you raise these kids. Like, here's our family standard. Most people never set the standard. It just kind of happens. They don't set the standard of how they want the education to go for their kids. What is the standard? If you're listening to this right now, what is your standard? Right? What do you want your kids to be taught? The values and principles that they're learning from school. 2 is you want to share your standard. In other words, it's not, sometimes we get like, I'm sick of this. Like, why is Barbara and Janet can't get along in the team? Well, do they know what the standards are? Number 1, you set one. And then number 2, have you shared it with her? You can't hold someone to a standard they don't even know what it is. So that's number 2 is share it. And then number 3 is you got to stick to it. Think about a friend group. Like, you think of Jimmy's friends group, right? If or in his community with We Are the They community. If someone was acting a fool in there, there's a pretty clear standard of here's how he sets standard. Yeah. He shares it. Here's how we all roll. If you act a fool, then we're going to stick to the standard, which means we're either going to autocorrect, we're going to tap you back into like, yo, bro, here's the way we work, or you aren't welcome in the community anymore, right? There's consequences to your decisions have consequences. And we need, as a society, to get back to like, hey, we have some standards, we share them with each other, and we stick to them, and we all kind of work together as a society to to uphold a set of values and principles and behaviors and culture of how we treat each other. All right, what's number 3?
Number 3 is forward-thinking infrastructure. We live in the fastest growing state in the country, and in my part of the state, we're the fastest part of growing in the state.
Explosion out there with new homes and businesses and so on.
Yeah, and so we've got to think about transit, public safety, hospitals, schools, water, utilities. In my part of the state, we're probably 10 years behind because we've absorbed a lot of this growth and we've built all these homes. And it's like, oh, shoot, we need restaurants. We need water and utilities. Oh, yeah, we need a hospital. We need fire. And that's maybe not been an afterthought to anyone's fault other than we were trying to keep up with the growth. And even still, there's a housing shortage in Utah with the amount of people that are coming to Utah. And so we've got to make sure that we get the infrastructure dollars that we need to take this growth on and also hold the state accountable to this growth, right? Because to give you one example is transit. Our part of the state, which is about 5 cities, pays about $40 million a year in transit taxes. We have 2 bus stops and a track stop, a light rail stop at the very end, 1 stop. So we receive about $2 million in resources and services. And so my question is, where's the 38? And I understand how taxes work, right? I pay taxes. It might go to a road in Tooele or St. George that I'll never drive on, and it benefits the entire state. But when we're growing at the rate we are and we don't have support from transit or whatever it is, we have to start questioning where are these dollars going. And I think, again, it goes back to all of us, we the people, is we have the responsibility and the right to question, where are my dollars going? And we should have that question, and it should be done by our leaders, and it should be done by us, the community, is don't just pay your taxes blindly. A lot of why this country started, the Boston Tea Party, was no taxation without representation. And so, let's start asking those questions to hold our government and our leadership responsible to, hey, I'm paying all this money. Where's it going if there's no roads here? There's no restaurants here. There's utilities is hard to get out here. We don't have any internet. We don't have, schools. My daughter's school last year, they had to bus 5th and 6th graders to the high school to be in portables. And so it's like we're growing so fast we don't even fit in schools. And so we've got to invest to this part of the state if it's growing at the rate it is. And so that's a part of it, is being willing to ask the right questions and bring a unified front from all of our 5 cities to say, state, we need this funding and we need this money.
Yeah, I think you also have a unique background as as an entrepreneur, own a construction company, you work for Google as well. Mm-hmm. So you have a unique background that you kind of understand, where are the dollars going again? Because as a business owner, you're like, where are the dollars going again? What's up? What are we doing? And it gives you, more clear priority, right?
Yeah.
Gives you more clear perspective of we're going to be paying taxes either way. Got it. Revenue's going to be coming into the business either way. Got it. What are we going to be doing with this? How do we allocate this to make the most impact in the business, or in this case, in the community, and for the future of the investment? So, the elections are coming up this fall, and so I kind of want to hear you just maybe some closing thoughts on both in your district, I guess your district, your state, but then just you're listening around the country, right? You're listening around the world. Just kind of your thoughts about voting, getting registered, just doing the whole thing, and how people. What advice would you give them leaving this to, again, go get involved, start caring. It does matter. You aren't helpless. Your voice actually matters. Some closing thoughts when it comes to voting and being part of it.
I think the least that you can do is vote. Register to vote and vote. When you have the thought that you're disenfranchised, of my vote doesn't matter, what is one vote going to do? The reality is that in the voting world, or in the campaign and politics world, is they know if you vote or not. And if you think that and you say, well, my vote doesn't matter, they actually don't pay attention to you. So you're proving their point right. And I have data I pay for, every politician pays for, is who votes, when they vote, how they vote. And that's where our attention goes to. I have a different kind of thought to that, where most politicians don't. They're like, focus your efforts on the people who are going to vote and go out and make sure that they come out and show up. Part of me has a problem with that because it's not we the people. We're not including everyone. And so part of my campaign, a part of what I've been pushing out, is educating people and bringing them along, and then getting out new voters, because the way that our government and our communities and our neighborhoods improve is if we all speak up and share our opinions and our thoughts. And again, as I'm speaking to voters, we're all there in the middle. We agree on 90% of everything.
It'd be hard to say, I don't agree that families should be strong. I don't agree that our education should be great, and have choice.
Yeah.
In our education, I'm going to pay the dollar, should have some choice. And then, man, I definitely don't agree we should have a lot of, improvement in infrastructure. Like, those are things I think, generally speaking, we could all be like, yeah, maybe we'd get there a little different or spend a little different or whatever. But overall, like, those are, I think, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, those are things we're probably all in favor of.
Yeah. And so the least you can do is register to vote and vote. This year in the world, the most elections are happening this year in the world. I can't remember the number, but trillions and trillions of dollars will be spent to get the word out to vote. And if you stay, have this same kind of thought and opinion, and I used to be there, my vote doesn't matter. The reality is it won't matter. And so get out, get involved, know what the issues are. Don't just vote who has the coolest name. Do 30 minutes of kind of research, and you can make a big difference on who wins and also what ends up happening in your neighborhood and your community.
Listen, brother, one of the things I admire about you, and it's so funny just having this conversation, you're exactly what I thought you were going to be from online, because what you see online is what you get. What you get is a ton of sincerity, a ton of heart. You can feel that humility and that empathy that comes from being raised with 5 families in one home. There's experiences there that say I feel you when people are going through hard times. Not like I feel bad for you. I feel you. I'm with you, and you have that that love for people, and I just am excited for what you're doing, because I think that you're what politics needs. They need more people that are doing it for the people versus doing it for themselves or for their own power or for their own ego or for their own recognition. We need more servants, and as you know, service to many leads to greatness. The way to really become, the greatest among people is to just go serve people and add value. So just appreciate you coming on, man. I'm excited for you, and, appreciate and respect what you're doing. And so my friends, go vote, get yourself involved, start letting you know it matters. If you want to get connected with Doug, and if you like these values and like these principles, like these ideas and concepts, make sure you go support him, and go support your local, House of Representatives, and go support your local senators, and go support your local city councils and school boards and something. Like, this stuff matters. All this stuff matters. So we will see you guys on the next episode.